Hi everyone, it's Sean Murphy and welcome back to my channel. And today, we're looking at the bridge. So the bridge, absolutely vital, and so many players around the world at every single level don't get this right. And it is one of the four foundational basics, I believe, of a good snooker technique: the stance, the grip, cue action, and the bridge. You need to get those four right. They are the building blocks and the cornerstones of your technique. Very, very hard to progress up the rankings, whether that be in a junior club, your local county league, the national side, amateur events, or the pro rankings, if these four parts of your game are weak. And there's so many examples of poor bridging that you see just at every single level, as I say. So I just want to jump in and do a real basic recap of the bridge. And for those of you who are way down the track, you might be going, okay, well, I don't need to see this. I've seen enough of it. You might even be a top amateur player or even a professional. You might say, okay, I know how to bridge. But these make a really good refresher, because I see so many people get these wrong. And honestly, if people had better basics, if the four pillars, those four cornerstones of their technique were just a little bit better, and they were able to stay a little bit more still on the shot, and were a bit more solid under pressure because they've got a better technique, honestly, they'd all be doing better. So maybe it's a good thing for me as a professional player that some of the other players, don't have these great techniques, because they'd be winning more tournaments. But honestly, if you're looking to get better at snooker, and if you're looking to improve your scores, looking to improve your breaks, it's not all about potting balls and choosing which order to pot them in and trying to play those fancy screw shots and those top spin splits, and should I be playing the split off the blue or whatever it is. It's not all about that. Not only do you need the knowledge of which shots to play in the correct order, you also need to have the basics in play for when you get nervous, your technique won't crumble and you won't miss that easy shot. Not necessarily because you lost concentration, but because your technique let you down. Now, the bridge. What is it and what do we need to do? Well, the bridge is the only part of your body really as a snooker player, other than your left arm as a right-handed player, that's in contact with the table. And it forms an essential part of your connectivity to what's going on. But it has to be still. There's a few players who I know very, very well who, for some reason, just at the point they're about to strike the cue ball, the bridge moves and it just doesn't work. It can't work. You have to keep that bridge still. And that means making it as strong and as reliable as you possibly can. I'm going to go right back to the start. This is how I was taught to make a bridge. And I think that this technique, like so many of the techniques that are still used around the world today, comes from the original Joe Davis How I Play Snooker book, which was printed all those years ago, which Steve Davis's father famously used to teach Steve. My own father used it to teach me, and I'm sure lots of you have seen them since. Let's go right back to the start. And how do you form an actual bridge? Well, this is how I was shown how to do it. As a right-handed player, take your left hand and place it on the table with your fingers together as such. From there, spread the fingers, but keeping them flat on the table, and try, if you can, to dig the pads, your fingertips, into the table. They have to be super, super solid. Any movement there, and you're in for a world of trouble. From that position there, you need to drag those knuckles up, but retain contact between your fingertips and the bed of the table. And then the final and possibly most important part of it is that the thumb then has to connect to your forefinger, making that V for the cue to run through. So many people get all of those bits right except the final part. That V is absolutely essential. There's lots of players on the tour actually who I see who they get all of this right and then that finger just sits there somewhere. Well, that means the cue is just going to wobble, isn't it? And you can see how much movement there is in that just there while I'm messing around. Imagine that, under pressure, trying to pot a ball to win a big match or win a big tournament. It's just not going to work. So, simple blue to the middle pocket. Let's have a little go at it. We'll run through it through each step. We take our stance at the ball. We've got our hands flat. We spread the fingers. We raise everything up. Fingertips are still in touch. And we bring the thumb in to create that V. And now we've got that solid V for the cue to move through. Nothing moves. And in it goes. Now, this doesn't mean that if you get a good bridge, you're going to pot every ball that you look at. Obviously, there are other parts to the game, and there are other parts that are very important, some more important than this. But I can't say it enough. Having a good basis, a good foundation for your game to work around is absolutely essential. Obviously, the more experienced you get, you just now come into the shot in that position, nothing moves, keep the thumb there, and everything works as it ought to. Keeping still is essential, and having a good stance, having a good grip, having a good cue action are all absolutely vital points. But as the part of your body that connects to the table, it's so important that your bridge stays where it is. And that comes down to having really good connection through the fingertips, through the pads of those fingers, and that strong V connected to your forefinger. This part here, you can always tell anyone who's played snooker, just test that little muscle there, just left of the thumb and just behind the knuckle there. Like that part there is super, super strong. I've done grip tests over the years. You know, you go to see the doctor and they have you do a grip test, and you know, I'm right-handed, do it with the right hand and you get a score. My left hand is actually even stronger because it's been doing that for 30 odd years. That muscle there has become really, really strong. Now, I'm not strong anywhere else, but that part is pretty strong, and that's all through snooker. So in, get that V nice, keep those knuckles up, and nothing moves. Now, what happens when you want to play with backspin? Obviously, one of the keys we haven't talked about yet in snooker is trying to keep that cue as parallel to the table as we can at all times. And if you take a bridge and you keep the bridge in the same place, then to get to the bottom of the ball, I'm going to have to do that with the cue. And now we're into problems because that will make the cue ball swerve. So how do I keep the cue as parallel as possible and keep the bridge, as we want it? If this is my standard bridge height there in the middle of the cue ball there, how do I get from there down to the bottom of the ball? Well, I could do that. I could just have, what I could do is I could just have one bridge height for every single shot and just move the cue. I do see people do that. I see amateurs around the world doing that in clubs. I go to a lot of clubs doing snooker exhibitions and snooker nights and demonstrations, and the amount of people I see who have one bridge height, they've bridged that height all their life, and if they want to screw back, they just do that. Like, it can work. You're still getting the backspin on. You're getting the backspin on in a fashion, but it's not consistent at all. And if you raise the butt of the cue and strike that cue ball a fraction off centre, you're going to swerve it. Now you're into all sorts of problems. And it might not make a difference on a shot of this length, but trust me, over distance, you're in for a world of pain. So, what do you do? Well, what you do is you take that position there, and if you do want to get to the bottom of the ball, you spread your fingers and lower those knuckles down. And you can see naturally we've ended up at the bottom of the ball. Keeping everything the same. Fingertips are still in contact, that pressure's still there, and the V is still intact. The other thing you can do, which good old Willie Thorne used to do, he made this bridge famous. It's quite an old school thing to do. I think Joe Davis did it as well. Maybe that's where Willie got it from. What you can do is if you're there and that's your normal bridge, he used to then turn his hand like that. So he loses contact with the table from this part of his hand, but he's turned his thumb into the table. That means he can get really low on the cue ball and keep that. He can keep his cue as parallel as he possibly can. So he's not doing that. like I see a lot of people do. He's actually there, and then from there, turns everything, lowers that down. And you can see how low I'm able to get to the bottom of the cue ball there. And you can put spin on the cue ball like effortlessly by doing that. Not traditional. You don't see many people doing it. I used to do it. And I remember starting working with a coach many, many years ago who wanted to stamp it out of my game very quickly, because you do lose a little bit of that solidity. It's not as solid. It can move a little bit, but it's much better than just tilting your elbow and accessing the bottom of the ball. What happens if I want to put topspin on? Well, it's just the opposite. We take our normal bridge height, take it into there. From there, if you want to get higher, you can't just dip yourself like that. What you have to do from there is imagine bringing your fingertips closer to you and raising those knuckles as you do it, and now you've automatically found yourself at the top of the ball. I didn't mean to do that, because now the cue ball is finished in that pocket and I've got to go all the way around the table to get it. And with the magic of a bit of editing, I've got the cue ball back. So I won't be making that mistake again. Anyway, that's how you get to the top of the ball. Let's have a quick refresh on how we do it. You start there in the middle, nice bridge, keep the V with your thumb there. If you want to get to the bottom, don't just raise your elbow and dip, just lower the bridge. Keep the fingers wide apart, keep that V intact, or you can do the old-fashioned Willie Thorne. That gets you really, really low. Again, from the neutral position there in the middle of the ball, you want to get to the top, bring those knuckles up. That will naturally lift everything up, and you can get to the very top. I'm not going through into the pocket again. Okay, so we've just repoed slightly further down the table so I can show you a little bit more variation on the bridge. Of course, those bridges that I've shown you only really work when you've got your hand on the bed of the table. So what happens when you're near the cushion, which we all find ourselves near the cushion from time to time. A couple of choices here. I like to keep the bridge, as neutral as possible. Like, don't make it too complicated. But a good bridge when you're near the side of the cushion, obviously just keep your palm of your hand on the side cushion, on the rail, on the wooden bit and the cloth, keep it there. I like to spread the fingers. I think the important thing here is one of the flaws I see, one of the mistakes I see a lot of amateur players make here is they don't have anything next to the cue keeping it, in place. So you can. I don't mind if you bridge like that. I don't mind if you have, a sort of what we would call, I suppose, an open bridge. That's what that would be referred to. Or I don't mind if you do that, or a closed. I mean, I was taught that was called the loop bridge, where you're looping that first finger over the top. I don't mind which one, but there's a couple of key points to make. Is that this forefinger either needs to be up against the cue or over it. And then you can see automatically, when I switch from that position into that position, you can see my second finger, my middle finger, automatically replaces. So if I'm there, bridging on the cushion there like that, the first two fingers on my bridge hand are acting as, they're like almost like a dam holding the cue back. They're right in there holding it in place. And the minute my forefinger comes over to loop over the cue, the middle finger follows it in, and it's only brushing up against the cue, but it's keeping it online. It's there as a bit of force, just to keep it in place. So I'm going to show you those in action. First one here, that's me there. Those first two fingers are stuck together against the cue, and all that does is it limits lateral movement. I can't really go much from left to right with those two fingers there. They're keeping the tip in place. They're giving me that chance to be as consistent as I possibly can at hitting my intended target on the cue ball. If I take those fingers away, then this cue can go anywhere, can't it? It's got room to move, which is an absolute killer. So, I don't mind if you start there, but keep those two fingers together. These two, they can do whatever they want. They don't even have to be there. But the two next to the cue are vital to keep everything in one place. The other one, the loop bridge, again, is exactly the same. But you'll notice, as I say, as soon as I switch from there to there, it's like an automatic recoil. That middle finger comes up and brushes on the side of the cue, the index finger is looped over, and everything stays where it should be. They're the little clues, they're the little tips. I see so many amateurs get that wrong. They do everything else right, but there's too much lateral movement. You can't really do much to protect against vertical movement. That's really up to you, and there's some tips for fixing that as well. But that lateral movement is restricted because those four fingers, forefinger and middle finger, wedged together to keep that cue online. The next type of bridge I want to show you is when you're bridging over a ball, because this happens all the time, doesn't it? I hate these. And, you know, obviously a player's individual height comes into question here. You know, how if you're a bit taller, these are a little bit easier. If they're more in the middle of the table, obviously you have an advantage over somebody who might need the spider a little bit more. But do you know, when you're bridging over balls, it really is about keeping it as simple as you possibly can. You must focus on striking the cue ball in the middle. If you're playing a shot bridging over another ball with side spin, you are asking for trouble. It is so difficult to do, because if I've got the cue up here and if I'm playing with side spin, I am in effect playing a swerve shot, and then you've got to control the swerve from A to B, hit the object ball where you mean to put it in the pocket. I mean, that is very difficult. Do you know, when I'm bridging over balls, if I finish in this position, I just want to get my bridge nice and solid. You know, the same rules apply. I've got a really strong V. You can actually see the pressure that I'm putting into my fingertips. You can see them pressed into the bed of the cloth. Obviously, the palm of my hand now raises up. It starts there and it finishes there. But those fingertips, those pads of my fingertips, are almost burying into the bed of the cloth, trying to hold on and find a firm foundation to stay in one place. And then, of course, the thumb making that V for the cue to run through. And I literally just want to keep it as simple as possible. I want to keep in the middle of that cue ball and just pop the ball and try to get through that shot, try and get to the next shot. There's a few little variations of bridges I see players making. The one I really don't like, I've never used it, is that one where you lose those two middle fingers and you have the index finger and the little pinky finger just in play. I just don't understand that bridge, because I just feel like it reduces your solidity. You're looking for a strong foundation. If you take two of your fingers out of it, you're just asking for trouble, I think. Your bridge can wobble a bit. It doesn't say or scream consistency for me. Little recap on the bridging over. Keep everything simple. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be. You're already out of position. Don't forget that. Just make it simple. Do what you would do on a normal bridge. Just make it higher. Keep those fingertips in place. Keep the V between the thumb and forefinger. And lastly, make sure you hit the middle of the cue ball. Just before we end, I want to just have a very quick run through of how to form a bridge and the basics which we covered earlier on. Get that hand flat on the table, spread the fingers and raise the knuckles. Bring that thumb in to create the V, and don't forget, if you need to get to the bottom of the cue ball or the top, don't drop or raise the back arm. Don't be lazy. Turn the bridge over, lower it, raise it, and you'll see your scores improve as your consistency does. Guys, I really hope you've enjoyed the video. I know this is one of the basics, but it's worth going over again. Good basics lead to good foundations, which leads to increased consistency, and your scores will start to climb. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.